Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
And welcome to Political Trade Secrets. I'm your host, Dustin Olson. Thank you to everybody who's joining us here from across the internet. We are live on 12 different platforms, whether it's Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, you name it. Wherever you're from, wherever you're watching, we really do appreciate you here today. In particular, we're going to be celebrating America, and I know that's what you want to do. And thank you very much for being here to do that, because we're going to have the official historian of our program, J. Mark Powell, is going to be joining us to talk about surprising history trivia for our Independence Day, and I think you're going to enjoy that. Looking forward to the conversation myself. I always learn something when we have this conversation. Just as a program note, Sean is out on assignment, so he will not be joining us today. But thank you to everybody for being here. And if you'd like to join the conversation, you can do so by simply just, posting a comment or question. It's right there. Wherever you're at, you can post a comment or question. It comes back through the magic of the internet, and we get to bring you into the conversation. So if you'd like to post a couple of American flag emojis, if you'd like to just say, "Yay, America," whatever it is, please do help us celebrate America today as we go into this very exciting Independence Day weekend. Thank you very much for being here. And additionally, if you'd like to be a part of Political Trade Secrets and be a part of our community, you can go to politicaltradesecrets.com, sign up, be a Political Trade Secrets insider, get exclusive stuff. We send out emails with great content. And of course, you can always check out all of our programs. They're over there at politicaltradesecrets.com. And additionally, we always send out fun and then also the articles from the program after the show. And if you would like to, I think Mark has actually a trivia thing that he wrote for one of the publications that he writes for, and we will send that out later today as well. You can text me at 202-918-3345. Again, that's 202-918-3345. And we love everybody who's part of our texting community. You can text me any questions you have. We definitely do our content based off of what folks like you are letting us know that you'd like to hear about. So please do text me at 202-918-3345. And of course, we have to pay the bills. If you are thinking about running for office yourself, if you're thinking about stepping up, speaking up, and showing up to really make a difference for this country, because that's what we're about. We're about empowering powerful political leaders to make a difference in your community, in your state, and in our country. And you can do that with me and Sean at olsonstrategies.com. And check it out, olsonstrategies.com. You can email me, Dustin at olsonstrategies.com, or we have the phone number there that you can check us out as well. But let's get to it. Let's get to celebrating America. And we just can't wait to do this and bring in, he's J. Mark Powell. He's the official historian of Political Trade Secrets. And he's an author of a historical novel, The Curse of Cain, which I recommend people check that out. Also, Tell It Like Tupper, which is a political novel as well that recommend people check that out. He's also, we'll ask him about some of his other professional things he's doing as well today. But with that, here is J. Mark Powell. J. Mark Powell, how the heck are you doing today?
Hello, Dustin.
How's it going? Well,
thank you.
Thank you for being here. As I said, you are the official historian of the Political Trade Secret Show, and people
sorry,
do enjoy.
Sorry, I didn't wear my crown.
That's right. Well, and everybody loves these episodes. Everybody loves getting to hear your, as you call it, you actually say you're not officially a historian. That's fine, but you're officially a historian for this program. But you are a historical storyteller, is how you.
Yeah, I was like 4 hours shy of a double major in college with history as the second degree. So I need to go back and pick up those extra 4 hours.
Yeah. Well, there's no time like the present, and I think you should definitely do that because you have a lot of stories to tell. Now, the purpose of this show is to celebrate America and also to highlight some of the surprising history facts that people may not know about Independence Day as a holiday through the years. It's evolved. Some things are the same, some things are different, but we have a lot of these traditions, and I think people are going to be curious as to where they have come from. And we have a comment from the audience. I am so proud to be an American. I am so grateful for all those that make our freedom that we celebrate possible, and that's absolutely the case. Well, why don't you tell us about that first 4th of July and that first Independence Day?
Actually, before we talk about the 4th of July, if John Adams had had his way, today would be the holiday. Today
Oh,
would be
really?
Independence Day. We'd be celebrating. Uh, the Continental Congress voted to declare independence on July 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
And then poor Thomas Jefferson, they said, okay, Tommy, here, write something. And they gave him like 36 hours.
Wow.
And he comes up with the Declaration of Independence. A lot of it, by the way, he kind of stole from Montesquieu's The Spirit of the Laws. But hey, he was, like a college student cramming the night before a paper was
So do you
due.
think
So
he double spaced and he got the
that's
font a little bit
right.
larger so that
It was corrected and handed back to him and graded,
Mhm.
margins. They then on July 4th, they passed the language of the Declaration. Okay.
Mhm.
Then they had it printed up and they signed it. They actually signed it on August 2nd. Uh, Adams felt that July 2nd was supposed to be the day to sign it. But technically, we could have, any one of those days, July 2, July 4, August 2, could have been Independence Day. But when it's written July 4 on the document, that's what people went with, and that's what they stuck with.
Yeah. And do you think they had any sense of clearly the language of it?
Oh,
They
yeah.
they got the importance of it, but do you think they thought it would be something where we'd have hot dogs and fireworks many years later?
Yeah, first of all, they were all keenly aware. They weren't using flowery language when they said we place our sacred honor, when we sign this.
Hmm.
They knew they were laying it on the line, that if the revolution didn't work, they could swing by the end of a rope.
Yeah.
And the Brits actually had a list drawn up of people they were going to settle the score with, and John Adams was right towards the top of that. There's no
Yeah.
doubt Adams would have hung. Um,
Hmm.
Adams writes a letter to Abigail, his wife, and says the day should be celebrated with fireworks and parades, and so clearly they envisioned this from the get-go, from day one, as a day worthy of big time celebration. You got to remember too, in the 1700s and well into the 1800s, pretty much people celebrated Christmas and New Year's Day and Easter Sunday. Some people then would celebrate Easter Monday. Some people kind of celebrated May Day, and that was all you had. There were
Yeah.
no holidays. Today there are 11 federal holidays,
Wow.
and then there's vacation time on top of that, and there was a lot more time. So on the calendar met a practical need for, here's the time we can take a day off in the middle of the year when we really need it. But they were observing it. They were commemorating it in 1777. It started in day one. Philadelphia and Boston both had commemorations going on.
And what did they do? What did they celebrate? How did they celebrate? I'm sure it's a little bit different than.
Fireworks were there from the get-go.
Wow.
They, for some reason, and I can't exactly tell why, except fireworks, going back to Chinese, have always been celebratory, right? They do them for weddings. They do them for the crowning of a new monarch, major military victories in a war. So fireworks have always had that kind of, this is a special way to celebrate kind of thing. So it got
All right.
that from the get-go. As most people, most towns would celebrate with parades, with parties. Businesses and shops were closed. It was considered unpatriotic to keep your store open on the 4th of July for regular business, and store owners were frowned upon who actually did that.
When did that change?
I kind of gradually in the late 1800s, early 1900s. By the early 1900s, you're seeing sales on 4th of July in some stores.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, that's not as new as it sounds. But a highlight, like I said, parades, there were picnics, watermelon feeds, festivals, kids shooting off firecrackers all the time. I've got a collection of about 250 original letters from the Civil War. And I just acquired one a few months ago where a guy is mentioning an operation at Petersburg, Virginia, where General Grant they built a mine underneath a Confederate fort and exploded it.
Hmm.
And he's describing this to his girlfriend and says, "You've seen those on the 4th of July, boys will take fireworks and try to blow up a little hill." So, that kind of thing was going on, even then.
I continued that tradition when I was a kid. But we used Legos, and we would use M80s, which were illegal. Actually, the M80s that we used were from my great uncle that I think were probably produced in the 50s. And some of them were dead, some of them still worked, but it was a lot of fun. And we would build those things so they couldn't blow up easily.
Many are the things that will be destroyed this Sunday.
Probably is not happy about that.
Many are the things that will be destroyed by boys on Sunday with fireworks.
Mm-hmm.
A highlight, they played town ball, which was a forerunner of baseball, which was kind of interesting. That was a big one because, you always tell people today that the rap on baseball is it's so slow.
Mm-hmm.
Baseball killed a lot of time. That's all they had back then was time.
Yep.
So they would play that, but a highlight, really the parade and the fireworks were the highlight. But the number 3 attraction on local small town 4th of July celebrations was always the reading of the Declaration of Independence. They would get a prominent person. It was a big honor to read the Declaration in your town square or your courthouse lawn or wherever. The problem is the Declaration. We all know the famous preamble, right? The Declaration is very long and it's very specific to 1776. It's dated. Yeah. So except for the beginning and end, the rest of it didn't really resonate. And really, by the late 1800s, the reading of the Declaration starts, can't we really cut that out and speed things up? The other stuff stayed, but the reading of the Declaration went. Interestingly, I mentioned...
It seems to me that would be a great thing to bring back.
Mm-hmm.
At least the beginning and end.
Interestingly, I mentioned, there weren't a lot of federal holidays at that time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know when the 4th of July actually became a federal holiday?
No idea.
1870.
Wow.
And basically it was like, oh, wow, you mean this thing isn't a holiday? Everyone just assumed it was. Pretty much the same thing happened with making the Star-Spangled Banner the national anthem. People just kind of thought it was the national anthem, and somebody in 1931 looked up and said, we've never put this in law. We've never passed it. So, people had accepted it as a national holiday, but it didn't become codified in law until 1870. One of the most interesting things that happened, and you hear a lot about, before we jump onto that, let's go back to celebrations. Mm-hmm. As I said, starting in 1777, there were celebrations. In 1778, Washington considered the holiday significant enough that he issued a double order of rum, a double ration of rum to all the soldiers in the Continental Army that day. They got a daily amount.
That's an excellent way to celebrate.
Yeah, and of course, then the guys who drank would go to the non-drinkers and say, "Hey, can I have your rum?" So they would get 4 shots instead of 1. Of course, by the way, rum at that time was considered to have medicinal qualities to fight off illness, as well as just the alcoholic fun partying aspect of it. 1779, it was decided, it wasn't an official action, but people decided they would celebrate the holiday on July 5th all across the country, because even though the revolution was still going on, July 4th fell on a Sunday. And so they didn't want to, the Puritanism was still strong in America, so they didn't want to taint the Sabbath, so they celebrated on Monday. Interestingly enough, you want to guess what the first paper was that printed the Declaration, and when and where?
I have no idea. And where was it?
It was Philadelphia, not surprisingly, July 6th. So just 2 days later, they had the thing in print, and papers then were passed all around, and of course, sent all around the country, and then other newspapers would pick up what was reported in those papers when they got them. So that was a way of getting the word out to the people. So they wasted no time on that.
How long did it take for it to get everywhere?
As fast as as boats and horses could move, because that's all you had.
So like
You know?
a month, 2 months.
Oh yeah,
Some places. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. In the extreme northeast and extreme southeast, because really you're just dealing with the Atlantic seaboard at that time, for all practical purposes. Interestingly enough, by the way, a handful of copies were printed on July 4th. 1776 and read. And in, I want to say 1989 or 1990, a guy was in a flea market and he found a beautiful, it was a Victorian print. I didn't care about the print, but it was in a beautiful wooden frame. So he paid $50 for this thing and buys it home. They had something you want to put in it. Buys it, takes it home, opens the frame, and in the back, folded up, was one of those printed on July 4th, 1776. Copies of the Declaration
Wow.
that somebody took before that. So his $50 netted him, I think, $1.5 million at auction.
Wow.
Norman Lear, for the Liberal People for the American Way, bought it.
Wow. That's crazy. That
It's
is
crazy to have $1.5 million in your pocket for fun little purchases.
absolutely. Yeah.
Mad money.
I might be tempted to watch it. And let's see here. Some people have said that the video ended, and I don't know if that's the case or not. But in the comments, if anybody can let us know if we are actually broadcasting right now. We're recording regardless, so we can get this out to folks. So let me just ask a couple other people.
You know, the comment from Alexandria earlier about proud to be an American, grateful all those who make freedom possible. This is always a time when I commemorate my 5 great-grandfathers, great-great-great-great-great-grandfather Charles Powell, Virginia Line Artillery, and he went through Valley Forge all the way. And that makes me enormously proud to be his son.
Really?
And, interestingly enough,
so it appears we're getting some kind of interference. It cut out for just a second there. So tell me again about Valley Forge.
Valley Forge, the Brits, Washington had been maneuvered out of out of Philadelphia, and had retreated into the Pennsylvania interior, and it was a really bad situation. They were running out of supplies. It was a very, very cold winter. You always hear about bloody footprints in the snow because the men were not supplied. The actual worst time for Valley Forge, then, this was the winter of 1776-77. The worst time then was in spring, because cold and flu season came in, where the weather warmed up. The cold, killed a lot of viruses, and that's when it really went through the ranks. And you got to remember, Washington's army was the revolution. When the army went, the revolution was over. So Washington kept that army together by sheer strength of will. And frankly, from my own personal opinion, this country should get down on their hands and knees and kiss George Washington's feet for literally creating it, and then the example he set as the first president. And he was keenly aware as president, everything he was doing was setting the precedent that would be followed afterwards. And to have power and just peacefully turn it over and walk away, you cannot overestimate the impact that had on who we are as a people.
So we've been through how many years is it now? It's been
245.
245. It's a pretty remarkable thing to have a country exist for that amount of time, and we've gone through a lot of different things. Something I'm curious about is you've done a historical novel, a fictional novel about the Civil War and the aftermath. What was it like in the rest of the in the South? Celebrating the 4th of July, did people do it? Was there so much grievance that they didn't, or what? How was that handled at that time?
Oh no, the South then as now was very patriotic, and they celebrated the 4th of July. The Confederates celebrated the 4th of July during the Civil War. As a matter of fact, a lot of them, while the war was going on, the North always called the war the rebellion. And by the way, there was no declaration of war, because only under international law, only one nation can declare war against another nation. And Lincoln's whole thing was the South is not a nation; it's a part of our country in rebellion. Okay,
Yeah.
the South disagreed and said, "Hey, we've got a country and a nation we formed." So the official title of the United States government today is the War of the Rebellion. It's not the Civil War. But a lot of the Confederates referred to it, while it was going on at the time, as the Second American Revolution. They saw it as a direct continuation of 1776 in their lifetime.
So there was no grievance that they weren't going to celebrate Independence Day because of that, because they viewed it as a continuance.
Only in one place, Dustin. Vicksburg, Mississippi. Vicksburg was a very heavily fortified Confederate Mississippi river town, and there was a 6-week siege. And the commander of the Confederate troops was a guy named John Pemberton, was a Pennsylvanian, who'd married a Southern woman, and then he sided with the South when the war came. He decided to surrender on July 4th because, as he said later, I knew my people and I knew I could get more generous terms on them on July 4th than any other day. And Vicksburg was so bitter they did not celebrate the 4th of July. The city did not celebrate the 4th of July until 1945 to celebrate the end of World War II.
Wow.
So that was, 82 years? So that was, but every place else, no, the 4th of July was,
So what other history trivia is there? Because you wrote a trivia for one of the publications. Do you want to share anything about any of that work?
Yeah, you can go. A lot of the things we've discussed are in that quiz, and it's at insidesources.com. It's posted there. One of the most famous things, and a lot of people know this, it is on July 4th, 1826, which was exactly the 50th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration. 2 presidents died on the same day, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, who not only were they former presidents number 2 and number 3, they both signed the Declaration. So to both die on the same day, and Jefferson had actually written the darn thing.
Yeah.
And that day being the 50th anniversary, it was just unbelievable. They were bitter rivals. Adams was, you could argue, the forerunner of today's Republican Party, and Jefferson led the forerunner of today's Democratic Party. They became very close friends after they both left the White House. And ironically, Adams died in the evening, and as he was dying, his last words were, "Jefferson still lives." But Jefferson had died early that morning. And of course, as we discussed earlier, it took a long time for news to travel, so he didn't know. A lot of people it really freaked the country out, by the way, at the time, because it was they didn't know if this was a sign of something from God or not. They were both very old. Adams, I believe, was 90, and which was remarkable at that time for that life expectancy to make it that long. They were. A lot of people speculated that they willed to make it to that date. They hung on. And there may be something to that. That's a very powerful thing. But interestingly, a third president of the United States also died on the 4th of July. 5 years later, James Monroe, considered the last of the founding fathers. So really, when he died in 1831, that was the end of an era. He'd made it almost to the age of Andrew Jackson.
Wow.
So he
did it also. So he did it in 31. So that would have been the 55th.
55th. That's right. And even then, there was kind of a national, what's going on here? Why are presidents dying? Because you got to remember, by that time they'd only had 6 or 7 presidents, and half of them have died on the 4th of July. Yeah. We also only have had only one president who was born on the 4th of July, and that was Calvin Coolidge,
who famously was weaned on a pickle, as the saying was back then.
Calvin Coolidge, Will Rogers said, Calvin Coolidge was the single most conservative president in American history. And Will Rogers, the famous humorist and comedian, said at the time, he said, it ain't that Coolidge done nothing. It's that he'd done nothing better than anybody had ever done it before.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to remember, we had just come through. Woodrow Wilson had this big burst of idealism and
Mm-hmm.
popular reforms, right?
Progressivism, and some
Progressivism,
people would call it American fascism.
and it saved the world, make the world safe for democracy,
Mm-hmm.
and World War One, and all this idealism. And then, right at the end of World War One, this kind of people forget we went through a really bad depression for a year and a half, 2 years. And the only reason it's forgotten because the depression of the 30s was even worse, so that eclipsed it. So by the time Coolidge comes around in the 1920s, they want to take a break. They want to celebrate. They want to party. By the way, they'd come through the Spanish flu pandemic, which we can all now relate to. So they were in the mood to just kind of cut loose and let go. And Coolidge was like, I'm going to run the country, but there's not going to be bold, visionary programs, and that's what people wanted. By the way, I always got a kick out of it. Coolidge slept like 10 hours a night and took a 2-hour nap every afternoon. You got to admire a president who sleeps half the day. It's a famous story that supposedly is true. I've never been able to 100% document it. He was, famous. His nickname was Silent Cal because he just didn't talk.
Yeah.
And he was supposedly a very prominent society woman, was going to be seated beside him at a White House dinner, and she had bet a friend of hers a large amount of money that she could get him to say more than 3 words in a conversation. And so she's trying everything she can, and she's bringing up everything, and he's just nodding and, whatever. And finally, she just lays it on the line and says, "Mr. President, I'm in a bad way here. I've bet a large amount of money that I can get you to say more than 3 words to me." And he looks at her and said, "You lose." 2 words. So
I love
he
that.
He had a real dry sense of humor. England borrowed a ton of money from the United States during World War I to stay afloat. England was really pressed to the walls financially by that war, and France and Germany and Russia, everybody just bled them dry because they were in it so much longer than we were, and that was causing economic problems in the 20s. And so they approached Washington about saying, "Hey, can we restructure this loan, and can we cut our payments back and everything?" And all Coolidge said famously was, quote, "They hired the money, didn't they?"
Mm-hmm.
And even at the time, everybody's like, "Who hires money?" That was probably some old New Englandism of his.
Well, what other things that have changed over time through America's celebrating of our independence? And
I think, Dustin, the point is not what has changed. What's remarkable is how much of it stayed the same. This is a real continuity in American culture. This is a mainstay of tradition. Picnics and picnics and parties and parades and events at cemeteries, flag laying in front of cemeteries, and going to the lake and going to the pool and grilling out and being with families, and then watching the fireworks that night. It's just a fun holiday. It's a fun holiday, and I guess I don't want to sound too cliche, but I think the perfect way to celebrate freedom is the freedom to celebrate it any way you want.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
By the way, this just occurred to me. I spent 3 weeks in Russia in 1996, and I was talking with these were just everyday folks, everyday Russians I was with, and one said very, very knowingly, he goes, yes, there's more crime committed in the United States on July 4th than any other day of the year. I said, what? He goes, yes, that's the most criminal day in America. And apparently it had been old Soviet propaganda that he'd heard that, while we're all out partying, our homes are all ransacked by burglars. I said, I'm not
you don't
saying
want to have an Independence Day because otherwise
I'm not. Yeah, we'd all stay home and, with shotguns on our laps guarding our property. I said, I'm not going to say there's no crime committed on July 4th, but I've never known anyone who's experienced crime on July 4th. But I always got a kick out of that.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite holidays, if not my most favorite. And I think to my hometown of Lyman, and we have a lot of folks from there who watch the program, and it's a bit of Americana. It's a great place. People know each other, people care about each other, and there's usually a barbecue in the afternoon at one of the parks, and oftentimes there's live music and people come together. The Chamber of Commerce puts on it's free for the public to come and have a hamburger and whatnot, and then people go home and they get ready to get their lawn chairs and they go down to the football field. And it used to be that the fireworks display was like one every 5 minutes. There'd be a firework would go up, and then in between you talk with people. It's actually a remarkable fireworks display now, but they have an ice cream social at the same time, and people are having ice cream. They're watching the fireworks. You can see it from forever because we're on the prairie and it's flat. But everybody's there together, and people talk before and they talk after, and it's just a place for all these folks from, they all have different views of the world, of course, but there's a commonality there. At that moment, we're all together. We're all Americans. And it's just a really amazing thing. And I've had people from all different parts of the country, whenever they're in Colorado, I always say if they're there for the 4th of July, you have to go to Lyman and have to experience a real American 4th of July, celebrating our independence. And patriotic songs are sung, and there's always someone from the town who sings the Star Spangled Banner. It's just really, it's always just an amazing moment, and you always see people you haven't seen for forever. Great experience.
Small town celebrations are absolutely the best. I'm hokey and corny deep in my heart, so I love them. Two personal 4th of July's stories from myself. I was sharing with you the other night, Dustin. My late father's birthday was July 5th, and my great grandmother, who was Dad's grandma, her birthday was July 3rd. So naturally, we always celebrated on the 4th. So the family all got together. So the 4th of July's got an extra family quality to me, in addition to all the stars and stripes and Star Spangled fireworks and stuff.
Yeah.
Another thing was one less pleasant memory as a kid. One of my sets of grandparents were dairy farmers in Northwest Missouri, and you can't set off firecrackers around cows because it'll scare them and they'll go dry, and then they're out of production until they calve again. And when that's how you make your money, so there was, and so, during summer vacation as a kid, I'm talking grade school years, spent a lot of time, on the farm, several weeks. And one year I was up there on the 4th of July and there were no firecrackers. And, that was non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And when you're a kid, that's like Halloween without trick-or-treating, or it's like Easter without Easter eggs. That was a major. So I put my foot down with Mom and Dad. I did not come from a household where kids rule like they do today, but that was not going to happen. I love going to the farm. I love being with Grandma and Grandpa, but not on the 4th of July.
Mm-hmm. Oh, this is the thing, is there's so many great memories, and it's an important part of our history, and it's an important part of really what we're about here is reigniting American patriotism. And I don't know, you get the sense that with everything that's happened in the last year and all the riots that happened last summer, that there's been a sense of having lost that importance that people have put on the 4th of July, and that or just in general on the patriotic nature. And you see recently with the Olympics, you see someone turning their back on the national anthem when that national anthem is being played to honor that athlete. That's why they're playing it, is to honor her, not any other thing, just to honor her, her contribution and her achievement, and then to turn her back on it. It says that there's a lack of understanding as to what has come before all of us and has brought us to this point, all the good and the bad and everything, but it's all been out of this moment on July 4th, 1776, when these founding fathers in language and word declared this idea into existence. And we've been living into that idea for 245 years. It's pretty amazing to think of that.
Oh, it's extraordinary. You got to stop and when we look back at history, we know the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at it, as I said earlier, at the time where it's still it's actually happening and unfolding, and you don't know how it's going to turn. These colonies were really the backwater of the British Empire. Okay, I think there was 3.5 million Americans in the colonies at that time, so we were tiny little, and they were strung out, and then a certain percentage of those were slaves, were African American slaves, and you take children out of the factor. There weren't a lot of adults of military fighting age. Okay, they took on a superpower. That would be the equivalent of taking on, the U.S. That was the superpower of their day, and they won.
Yeah.
Do you know what the odds were that they would succeed? It's really incredible, really incredible. Now, of course, don't forget, we were losing the Revolutionary War until France came in. France tipped the balance of power our way. That helped a lot. But there are time after time throughout the Revolution that's just, it's like an old fashioned cliffhanger movie
Mm-hmm.
where it's about to come falling apart, and I'm sorry, but I just see the hand of God in it myself.
Yeah.
For instance, George Washington had retreated to New York, and then he very ill-advisedly had been pushed. He decided to make a stand on Long Island, which wasn't the right move, and then retreated into New York City, and the Brits had him surrounded, and that was it. It was curtains. This was the summer of 1776. This was, I believe, in August, early August, and they were, getting ready to make a big push on New York City. And once Washington was gone, that was just a matter of mopping up and rounding up the traitors and hanging them. And a huge thunderstorm blew up, and that storm gave cover for Washington to withdraw across the river and continue the fight. And then he retreated ultimately all the way down into to Pennsylvania at Valley Forge, as we mentioned earlier. Why did that storm come up at that particular moment when it was desperately needed? Over and over and over again. That December 1776. A bunch of the guys, their enlistments were almost up in January, and they were ready to go home. They were starving. They hadn't won. They were miserable. The family needed them back home. I mean, they weren't shirkers or slackers. They'd done their duty, and the reasons for leaving were compelling, and Washington knows he's got to do something. So on Christmas night, 1776, he crosses the Delaware River with big, huge chunks of ice in the river. I mean, it was a major undertaking, and attacks the British, the Hessian soldiers who'd hired to fight for the British. And this gives the men a fresh sense of self-confidence, and many of them enlist and stay on right at the critical time. So over and over and over again throughout it, it's just an incredible story.
And if people are interested in a retelling of that fateful Christmas night, our patriotic Christmas special from this past year, we go into that and all the different patriotic Christmas stories, which have been great. Well, Mark, this has been awesome. Thank you very much for sharing all this great trivia. And I know that there's more at insidesources.com. What else are you working on, and that people can, if they would like to work for you, you write for hire, and if people are interested to use you?
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a website, jmarkpowell.com. My Holy Cow history stories are published there, and feel free to visit it. You can contact me through that, and if anyone needs some writing, I'll be happy to write for you.
Excellent. And my dad just posted, this is awesome. He says, Mark just finished The Curse of Cain. Excellent page turner. Loved it. Looking forward to your next one.
Thank you.
So
much appreciated, Mr. Olson.
Yep, that's awesome. Well, thank you very much. It's been great having you on, and we will look forward to having our official historian on for the next patriotic holiday, and can't wait to have you on for that. So thank you, Mark.
My pleasure.
Have an amazing Independence Day.
Happy holiday.
Likewise. Well, that was a heck of a lot of fun, and it's great to have Mark on the program and to share his thoughts and his experience and his knowledge of history, and to tell it in a compelling way. And people should go to insidesources.com and check that out. Check out all the great stuff that they're doing over there, but in particular, check out the 4th of July trivia and see how you do. I have a feeling you just got the crib notes, so you might do pretty well on the trivia there, or the quiz, and really, really great. So, we talked about how in 1826, how the two former presidents, two founding fathers, Adams and Jefferson, passed away, and that there was no communication. If you are looking to have great communication and get it to people quickly, I recommend you check out 10centtexting.com. If you want to get a message out there very quickly, have everybody see it, because the fact of the matter is 82% of people open every single text. And what we're finding with 10centtexting.com, and we've used 10centtexting.com on projects recently, we've actually hit 90+% open rates. There's no other tactic out there like that. If you have to get a message out there, have people see it. And the key is working with 10centtexting.com. They use rich media, what they call MMS text messaging. That means a picture, a GIF, moving pictures so that people, draw attention to the picture, and video as well. So you can actually get 90+% of people to open up your text message, be able to compellingly show them a picture, a GIF, or a video, and get your message in front of people. And you can actually, this is one of the things you can do, you can actually have two-way communication. It's really top-notch, highly recommend it. One of the best things going right now, and they are fueled by Grassfire LLC. If you need canvassing, petitioning, or live calling, go to grassfire.us, schedule a complimentary consultation. Really, if you are tired, if you're trying to get on the ballot out there in the country, whether it's a ballot initiative or it's if you're a candidate trying to get on the ballot, if you're a political professional, you know what it's like. You have to hire these fly-by-night operations, these carnies, frankly, and it is very difficult to find people that you actually trust are going to follow the rules, follow the law, and get you on the ballot. And you have a partner in Grassfire that's actually why it came into existence, is to bring integrity to this process, to honor that First Amendment right to petition your government. So I highly recommend, if you are trying to get on the ballot anywhere in the country, to partner with Grassfire. And if you need canvassing or live calling, if you're running for governor, you're running for senator, you're running for congressman, you're running for county commissioner, that you're not going to be able to talk to every single person across your district or across your state. You're going to have people do that. And if you want high quality people who represent you well, who represent that next U.S. senator, that represent that next state senator, you want somebody who makes sure that they put great people out there who are going to put your best foot forward. So go to grassfire.us to check out Grassfire LLC for canvassing, petitioning, and live calling. Really do appreciate it. And as a reminder, Olson Strategies at olsonstrategies.com. And please go to Political Trade Secrets, sign up to be a Political Trade Secrets insider, get exclusive stuff. And we really do appreciate everybody there. And I will be sending out later today, I will send out the trivia, the quiz over there at InsideSources.com for Mark's writing over there, 202-918-3345. Text me, and we'll be sure to include you in all of our texts, including every show that goes live. We will be off most of next week, but we'll be having excellent, some of our best hits, as well as a few potentially live shows. As you know, we've been really looking into what is critical race theory. We might have a few more interviews. The one we had for today got moved, and we'll be having Philip Wegman on at a later time to talk about his experience as a White House correspondent for Real Clear Politics, as well as his experience in his reporting on critical race theory in the Biden administration, and talking to Josh Hawley and him taking it on at the U.S. Senate. So stay tuned for all those great episodes that are going to be coming up, and really do have just an amazing 4th of July, have an amazing Independence Day. And I do encourage people to say Happy Independence Day, because that really is what it is. And I have a comment here from one of you. Happy birthday, America. Let us use this time to be grateful for the freedoms we have and not take it for granted. Hashtag USA, hashtag 4th of July, hashtag God bless America, hashtag let freedom ring. Thank you so much for being a fellow American. And this is the thing that brings us all together. And thank you for being here as we seek to reignite American patriotism. Have a great Independence Day.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes, and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter at politicaltradesecrets.com.